Welcome to the Purposely Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast presented by Boss Girl Creative. This is episode number 483. Today I'm talking about 6 lessons I've learned growing a 6-figure specialty event rental business. Now let's dive in. Hey, I'm Taylor Bradford, host of the Purposely Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast presented by Boss Girl Creative. I help small business owners turn their purpose into a paycheck, and it starts with visibility. In the online world, visibility equates to sales. So if you're dreaming of being the next $1 million entrepreneur, you've come to the right place because weekly I share visibility tips, brand advice, and business resources. So grab a notebook, your favorite pen, and a beverage, and let's do the work. Hello, welcome to episode number 483. I'm your host, Taylor Bradford. Thank you so much for pressing play. Today, I am diving into 6 lessons that I've learned through growing a 6-figure specialty event rental business in the wedding industry primarily, but now I've actually been pushing myself over towards corporate and film production, which is so incredibly exciting. And that is on deck for today. Today's episode is brought to you by Dubsado, which is the CRM that I have been using for over 5 years to help me manage the Sugar Creek business and give me back time. It allows me to handle contracts, take payment, schedule appointments, and create workflows so that my clients are led from A to Z with how I want them being led very intentionally through the process of my business. And it helps create expectations and boundaries, and those things matter in running a successful business. So if you're ready to take back some of your time or take back a lot of your time, give Dubsado a try. For the listeners of my show, you will receive 20% off your first month or your first year. Go to bossgirlcreative.com/Dubsado to take advantage of that. Okay, so let's find out, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, what in the world has been going on in the land of social media. Social media headline number 1, support for the U.S. TikTok sell-off bill is waning, according to a new report. Public support for this ban has been declining over time. Social media headline number 2, TikTok adds Instagram Notes-like feature to inboxes. It's IG Notes, but on TikTok. Social media headline number 3, Instagram adds broadcast channel replies. This is another way to promote topical engagement within the app. Social media headline number 4, Instagram adds new DM engagement options. The new elements arrive for all users as Instagram DMs continue to see more usage. Social media headline number 5, X launches new connected TV app, another step toward its transformation into a video-first platform. And finally, LinkedIn launches a Gen Z-focused podcast via iHeartRadio. They are expanding their podcast network. And that wraps up this week's social media headlines. So, we are sitting in early September, and man, we are finally feeling some fall weather in the mornings and evenings here in Texas, and I am loving every bit of it because we are outside a lot right now because we are developing our land. We are working on the runway right now and actually doing as much clearing as we possibly can, and that's been really exciting. But we just started, or I started the process late last week, or maybe it was this weekend, in getting our runway submitted to the FAA through a very specific portal that you can use to create an airport. And while ours will be private, it will not allow for public traffic. It will allow for, obviously, us to land in a designated area. But also in the process of clearing the land out and getting rid of all of the overgrown underbrush, etc., and to get rid of the dead trees, we have discovered areas of our land that have building capacity and building opportunities. And we have talked about, when we were on the hunt for land, how can we make the land make money for us? And when you are me and my husband, that is like first and foremost, how can we make more money? And it's not necessarily the money aspect. It's how do we make this be a write-off? And by doing this land clearing, we are seeing the opportunities sitting on this land that we just purchased that are going to allow us to create some Airbnbs, which will make a lot of this planning and developing and building and all of that a tax write-off, a new business adventure for us. And it will allow people that have similar planes as us to do weekend fly-ins and stay in one of our rentals, which is so incredibly exciting and is also necessary to continue seeking having a designated landing strip. Even though it's private, we would be allowing the guests coming in to fly in, tie down their plane, and stay with us for whatever length of time they are wanting to. So super excited about that. And it's just like when you don't know what you have until you start digging in and clearing out and reducing clutter, etc. Like lots of opportunities have a way to just like start bubbling up in front of you, which is total bonus. Like we were really hoping that there would be some income producing opportunities on our land. And turns out, yep, there are. So that's fun. So today I'm talking about 6 lessons learned growing a 6-figure specialty event rental business. And I want to preface this by saying this is not about the 6 figures part, right? Like whatever your financial goals are your specific goals for your life and your business. And yeah, I had this dream to create this 6-figure opportunity for myself through Sugar Creek, but the goal was never, or the focus was never the 6 figures per se. It was just getting there. And so today's 6 lessons that I've learned growing a 6-figure specialty event rental business. And this has been a culmination of what I've learned over the last almost 10 years of running this business. So I launched this business in 2014, around October. And so coming up on my 10-year anniversary of the business, the specialty event rental business, and I can tell you right out of the gate, I had no idea that I could create something like what I have now. I just was looking for a side hustle, something that sounded fun, and, we just kind of went with it. So this has been 10 years. This is not something that has happened overnight. And I want to be clear that your business journey with whatever niche you're in or whatever market or whatever industry that you are in is yours to walk and yours alone, just as these last 10 years have been mine to walk and mine alone. So I'm excited to just talk through these 6 lessons that I've learned through the last almost 10 years of being in business. And specifically because even though I reference Sugar Creek a lot, this focus of this podcast, or the focus of this podcast, is not teaching you how to have a specialty event rental business. The focus of this podcast is driven by my entrepreneurial journey as a whole and keeping you aligned in your purpose for your own business journey. So I'm not here to be like, oh, this is how you do specialty event rentals. That's not what this podcast is about or has been about, but I'm excited to kind of share what has driven Sugar Creek specifically. So let's start with background, because background is super important in setting the stage for where I'm at almost 10 years later. And that's important. Your foundation, your background is part of your story, and you shouldn't hide it. You shouldn't be overwhelmed by it. You shouldn't be sad by it or feared by it, etc. It is part of your story. It's part of your journey, and it just is what it is, right? I started in storage units. that's my story. That's the start of this story. But we're going to get further back into the background, further back into time, and talk about like where I was in my headspace before I ever got to the concept of specialty event rentals. So let's rewind back in time to my college days at TCU. So I graduated with a kinesiology degree and a business minor. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt, or without like any, like I don't even know what word to use right now, but my business minor was focused on C-suite, the corporate track. It did not give me any like lessons for an entrepreneurial journey, and which is so sad, but I understand like colleges aren't there to help you learn how to run your own business. They're there to help you send you into corporate America. So kinesiology degree and a business minor, that's what I left TCU with. And right out of the gate, I was a personal trainer. So I started out athletic training while I was in college. That was really the whole reason I was at TCU. And I pivoted my junior year and was like, what in the world do I do? And so I got myself into personal training. I got certified as a personal trainer. And then I continued to do that. I continued to be a personal trainer for quite some time after college. And in that time, I met my husband during college, and he was very entrepreneurial driven. And so that kind of was a match made in heaven for us. And anyways, I'm not going to bore you with all of those details, but we got ourselves into running a mobile dyno before we were married, and running a wholesale motorcycle business. And then we got ourselves into owning a used car lot. And then I started buying investment property, and it just kind of propelled me into forward momentum. And I was open to doing a lot of things. I ended up getting myself into oil and gas for quite some time and living on the road. And I discovered blogging and all of that. And then one day, so now here we are, one day, let's start talking about event rentals. One day, a friend of mine, I think this was around 2013, she was like, hey, I've got a good friend down in College Station area, and she has a rental company, primarily does tailgates for Aggie football games and basketball games. What do you think if we did that up here? You got TCU, you're very connected, etc. And I was like, like schlepping tables and chairs? That does not sound fun at all. And I was like, but if you want to start, I'll be your cheerleader and you do you. And so we kind of shelved the idea, or I thought I shelved the idea. I don't know what she continued to do from there until she got engaged and was doing her bridal portraits, and she rented a vintage sofa from one of my former competitors. Now, like fast forward to where I'm at now, they have retired that business. But at the time, they were one of the few specialty event rental businesses that existed in our market. And she rented a velvet sofa from them for her bridals and got to kind of see like this window of something that looked fun. And of course, you do need a passion when you're in business. You absolutely have to have passion when you're in business, but you also need some structure. You got to have some structure. It can't just be about fun unless it really is just a side hustle. But so that's how we were like introduced into specialty event rentals. But when we started in 2014, we were doing like tea parties and baby showers. That was the market we were in. We had no clue that the wedding industry existed, for sure didn't know about film production or corporate events. And that was slowly like opened up to us as we were doing tea parties and baby showers. So 2014 officially launched our business. We had 300 items between the two of us. And again, like I said, we were doing baby showers and tea parties, but we did quickly learn that we were not marketing to the correct zip code that could afford what we were doing. And the photographer for my former business partner, she was like, hey, I see that you're doing this. You might look into networking in the wedding industry and kind of open some other doors for you. And that's kind of how we got into weddings, was through the connection of her own wedding photographer, whom I still have a great relationship to this day. She still is an active wedding photographer. She is how I literally just continued opening doors for myself. So I will be forever grateful for her. So if I look back now where I'm at currently, if I just think back to those days, I never would have imagined I would have a 5,000 square foot warehouse full of beautiful pallet racking that we sandblasted because it used to be Home Depot orange and is full of beautiful furniture. That I never would have imagined building 21 farm tables, personally in my garage. And I just never would have thought about those things or been able to dream up those things because I didn't know what I didn't know, So as I'm sitting here thinking about these things, I, have to also think about the journey that is Boss Girl Creative and this podcast, The Purposely Aligned Entrepreneur. I'm sitting in the same closet that I've been recording in for over 9 years. So the podcast turns 10 next July, which is so exciting. And as I'm thinking about these things, I'm like, wow, look how far I've come. Look what I have endured. Look what hurdles I have jumped. And look where I'm at now with intention and purpose. So I feel like when we are in business, a lot of time we start following people or we look up to people and we forget that they also started at zero. I say this a lot. You cannot compare where you are in your journey to somebody else that you see on social media because they got to where they are through whatever lessons life threw at them, and their journey is not your journey. And we all start at zero. But I think we forget when we start looking at social media, we forget that they also started at zero and have had life hand them lessons that either, were thrilling to experience or were, just made you want to pull your hair out or cry. But we can't forget that the people we look up to and the people that we admire started at zero. I literally just had this conversation with my now former assistant, which, is a whole nother conversation for a different day. But last Wednesday, I was given less than a 2-week notice for my current assistant leaving me. And to say that I cried after the conversation would be a truth, because the week after she's like Friday of this week is her last day, and next week I have 3 events. Thank you for leaving me during busy season. But the conversation after she told me she was putting in her notice, I just reiterated this fact that you can't compare your journey to somebody else's. And I saw this in my previous assistant where whatever timeline she had in her head, because it wasn't laid out exactly how she thought it was going to go, she kept herself focused so much on that she forgot to keep living her life. And I'm seeing it, or I was seeing it in my current assistant. And I, had this conversation after she gave me her notice that this is never an overnight thing for people, right? And what I have created, what my husband and I have been through, is not something I would wish on people. We have had some really tough times, but people are very quick to compare where they are to where we are right now. And it's hard to kind of buffer that in my business, because my assistants end up seeing the orders that we are servicing, and they get to see the dollar signs behind that. And if you're around me and I've got a roofing business, you're also seeing checks coming in, but you also don't see the checks being written out. I just paid my supplier bill and wrote a $48,000 check to my supplier, because we've been roofing hardcore over the last couple of months. And that's just a 30-day bill. So yes, the money's coming in, but the money's also going out. But we're very intentional with what we do with the money. And I think people forget that. And it's really hard when you're young. I know the pressure of social media cannot be easy. I'm so grateful that I grew up in the 80s and 90s really without the pressure of social media, because I don't know that I would be on the same kind of trajectory had I had the pressure of social media, because comparison and imposter syndrome are crazy pants at that level of life, like the younger generation and what they're dealing with and what they endure on a day-to-day basis. And so I can see it, but I was like, you have to remember your journey is not anyone else's. And you can't compare where you are right now to even me. Like, I've got almost 15 years on her. Actually, I have more than that on her. I probably have, she was born in like the early 2000s. I graduated high school in 1999. Like, it's no comparison. So let's talk about these lessons. Lesson number 1, more isn't always more. Less is more. Don't trade your hours for pennies. And this is so true. Like, I had somebody reach out to me. She's got a specialty event rental conference that she hosts, and it's back for 2024, but I will not be able to attend it because it's in busy season, and I just don't have the headspace to go out and do that. So she's been asking questions like, how's your business going? You know, how are things in your world going? You usually have your hands in a lot of different cookie jars. Like, what is that like for you? And so I know that she's like looking for content, right? And I'm an open book when it comes to that. And so I, disclose that I actually just had noticed that my assistant was leaving. So that's fun, and fun being sarcastically fun. And that I just got enlisted with the Texas Film Commission, which is really exciting because I really want to explore prop buying and prop styling and that kind of thing. And just kind of gave her some insight that, my average ticket order is higher than probably a lot of specialty event rental companies, and that I don't have a desire to be the Founds of the world or the Lutes of the world. I don't have a desire to have that kind of overhead. I don't have the desire to work that many events. And I am Sugar Creek. And it's hard to stay who I am if I grow to the levels that I've seen some of my competitors grow. And that works for them. They are quantity. I'm not saying they aren't quality, because they for sure are quality, but they have to produce such a high level volume of events because of their overhead and because of their size. And I don't want that. Like, I don't wish that on I don't wish what they're doing on anybody, but that's never been my goal. My goal has been less is more. I don't want to trade pennies for hours. I want to make more money in one event so that I can choose to do less events because I'm making more. And I don't always think that more is more when it comes to your time. Once you start trading a lot of your time, even though entrepreneurs love working 80 hours for themselves instead of working 40 for somebody else, you have to be really smart with those 80 hours, right? I love working. My husband and I both love working, and we don't feel like it's work, but we're intentional still with our time, and that matters. So more isn't always more, less is more. Don't trade your time for pennies, or don't trade your hours for pennies, because it's not going to make you more money. Like, you getting smarter with what you're offering and increasing your prices so that you work less, that's better. In my eyes, that's the model that I am after. So I probably was averaging within the last few years, if we, don't think about COVID, I was probably averaging about 40 events a year. I probably have less than 40 events now, but I'm making so much more money, and I'm targeting an audience. That's number 6, but I'm going to just quickly say, I know who my ideal customer is, and I'm targeting them in a way that's allowing me to have bigger ticket orders. So less is more. More isn't more. Don't trade hours for pennies. That's lesson 1. Lesson 2, I want you to really hone in on your craft, what it is that you offer. Whether that is a service-based business or a product-focused business, you've got to master the thing that you're doing, because that is the thing that you're doing. You have to get so incredibly good at knowing how to do it and doing it well. And that's what helps you do less is more. When you are so like uber focused on what it is that you offer to your clientele, you will start attracting a more luxury style client who thinks what you have to offer matters more to them. Like they're willing to drop, mega dollars for you to do that thing for them. And that, that sets you up for getting to six figures. Master your craft. Get so incredibly good at your craft that it's like you can just do it in your sleep. That's lesson number 2. Lesson number 3, you are your biggest selling point. Truly, you cannot be replicated. I say this over and over and over on the podcast. You cannot be replicated. People like to buy from humans. They like to buy from people that they know, like, and trust. And you need to be comfortable knowing that. You need to be comfortable knowing that you are your biggest selling point, because you can't be replicated. We can all use the same tools. We can all use the same resources. Originality really is hard to achieve at this point in where we are in time, but you can't be replicated. So you are your greatest selling factor. You are what people are attracted to and why they buy from you. So I want you to get really good at being the biggest selling point of your business. Lesson 4, stay in your lane. I'll never forget this. When my business partner and I decided to go separate ways, she also wanted to add a new leg to her business and became a wedding planner. And I have no desire to handhold a client in that manner. Like, absolutely no desire, especially when I was more in weddings. I don't want crying to happen. Like, I'm not comfortable with that. So I want to show up, make things pretty, and then leave, and then come back and pack it all up. I want to be kind of your foundation. I don't want to be a planner. But the moment she announced she was going to be doing that, I felt waves happening in my market. Because first of all, she moved out of our market and decided to do that, but it still got back to my market. And I had a lot of people literally come up to me, like questioning me in a very unhappy way, whether or not I was about to do the same thing. And I was like, whoa, no, I'm staying in my own lane. I'm a specialty event rental business. I'm also a designer. You guys have known that from day one. That's nothing new. I'm staying in my lane. Now, what I want to preface this staying in your lane by is that it doesn't mean you can't explore other avenues. I want you to stay in your lane based on how you are operating your business. I want you to stay focused on what it is that you're doing. I don't want you to be all squiggly in the services or offerings that you have that don't make sense to the underlying foundation of what it is that you do. That's what staying in your lane means. It's not just about like adding another service like wedding planning to your business that's already servicing the wedding market. It is staying in your lane and making sure that what it is that you offer stays in alignment to the original, right? Unless you're completely pivoting and that's completely different and you start a whole nother business and you retire what you were doing. But staying in your lane, focusing on what you're doing and not focusing on what others are doing matters, because it allows you to master your craft. It allows you to be intentional with your time. It allows you to be purposefully led in the direction you want to go, which is all of the lessons that I've talked about so far. So staying in your lane, staying focused, keeping your horse blinders on is so important if you're on this trajectory of six figures. Number 5. Oh, I said number 6 was ideal client. It's really number 5. Number 5, know who your ideal client is and who you're speaking to. I realize that a lot of people focus hard on this, and there's a reason. If you don't know who you're speaking to too many people, and then you're muddying the water and you're not actually attracting your ideal client. When I first started Sugar Creek, like I said, it was baby showers and tea parties. And my client was people that were pregnant or people that were about to get married or tea parties. And I didn't really have a focus beyond that. Now, Sugar Creek, we have honed in on my tailored collection. And I always say we because I want it to sound bigger, but it's me. It's me. I'm Sugar Creek. And, but I still use we as plural just to kind of make it sound like there's more than just me, which there is, but there isn't. But I really focused on what the tailored collection would include. And when I could see the writing on the wall, I started making pivots. And I know I've said this couch story before on the podcast, but I'm going to reiterate it. I had been looking for a vintage Chesterfield sofa for so long, but my goal at adding inventory into my collection was I needed to get my money back in the investment within 1 to 2 rents. Like I made that a thing for me in my business early on. I wanted to not have to wait to get my money back before I was making profit on that particular piece. So 1 to 2 rents. Now, when I invested in chairs, I knew that would take me longer and that was a much bigger investment. But other pieces, I knew that I wanted it to be in 1 to 2 rents. So finding a Chesterfield to fit that was not happening because leather furniture, especially vintage leather furniture, is not cheap. And so I had to switch my mindset on, okay, this is going to take me a little bit longer to get my money back from, but I think this is going to be what I need in order to continue to keep my business thriving. So it was a round top trip, I think spring of 21, where I found Frederick the Chesterfield and I met Seth, my leather guy. And I bought that sofa and got it back into Sugar Creek and I was so stoked. I already had Fenwick leather sofa, but he was mid-century modern and not this yummy looking vintage Chesterfield that is Frederick. And so Frederick came into inventory and that summer I had somebody reach out to me, which like plot twist turned out to be Paramount. And they wanted my furniture for their upcoming VIP premiere party for season 5 of Yellowstone. But I didn't know that when they first reached out. They wanted Frederick sofa and they wanted Fenwick sofa and they wanted me to design out 2 lounges for a party. That's all I knew. And the theme was kind of lodge meets Texas meets ranch. And that's all I knew before I signed an NDA. And fast forward to then learning who it was that I was working for. And I was like, oh my gosh, Fenwick is just not going to cut the bill. So I reached back out to Seth, my leather guy, and I knew I was about to be heading back down to Round Top for my fall buying trip. And I was like, hey, what are you bringing? I need to buy some more leather furniture. I've got this really cool opportunity and I want to give them some options because Fenwick just wasn't the right option for what it was that we were trying to do. And so he sent me what he was bringing and I basically created a collage board and said, this is what I'm about to buy. And they sent it back to Paramount and Paramount's like, we want it all. And I was like, oh my gosh. So Frederick led me to Paramount, which led me to Yellowstone, which led me to Ed Sheeran, which continued to lead me through. And here we are. And all because I finally found Frederick and was willing to change how I invested in one single piece. Frederick has since paid for himself more times than I can count, and all of the furniture that I was able to purchase to use for that event was paid for in that particular event. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do more corporate. They have bigger budgets. I can invest in better pieces and I can be more intentional with my collection. And so now I have a Western Ranch collection and I'm currently working on growing a kind of Amalfi Coast, kind of meets California coastal, meets a little modern. And so I've invested in bentwood chairs and now I'm on the hunt for some French inspired furniture that kind of leans that direction. And yeah, so knowing who your client is matters. It's what gets you to 6 figures. It's what allows you to charge more. It allows you to work less. That matters. Finally, lesson 6, build your business around your life. Now, not everyone has my life, right? It's me and my husband. We have no kids. Right now, we have no pets. We are talking about a dog for the land. I don't know how that's going to work. I kind of have a fear about that. So I may not explore a dog, but I feel like there's going to be predators and we might need some alertness out on our property. So we might get a dog, but it's just me and him, and we can work 80 hours if we want. But what we've gotten better at, we haven't always been good at this because work drives us. We're weird like that. What we've gotten better at is building our business around our life instead of the other way around, because your business will run you into the ground if you are focused in that matter. So you got to be purposeful about building your business around your life and allowing you to actually live your life. So if you choose to work 80 hours, that's one thing, but make sure that you are living your life around those 80 hours and that your business isn't driving your life is driving your business. So those are your 6 lessons, the lessons that I've learned in 6 figures of growing Sugar Creek. And I want you, if you're on this journey to 6 figures yourself, I want you to know that these 6 lessons matter. Let's repeat them. More isn't always more. Master your craft. You are your biggest selling point. Stay in your lane. Know who your ideal client is and build your business around your life. And there you have it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Again, use Dubsado if you want more hours back in your life. Use Dubsado. Get that 20% off either your first month or your first year. Go to bossgirlcreative.com/Dubsado. And until next time, I hope you have a great rest of your week. Hey, real quick before I go, I wanted to pop back in and say again, thank you so much for listening to this latest episode of the Purposely Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast. I would so love a favor from you right now. Would you please share this episode with a friend or share it to your social media and tag me at Boss Girl Creative? Oh my gosh, that would mean so much to me if you did that right now. Okay, I'll see you next week with a brand new episode.